For the second part of the series on social media and education, I'm going to look at some of the specific tools. So we'll begin with Twitter. Twitter is a real-time information network that connects you to the latest information about what you find interesting. So that is the definition of Twitter by Twitter itself. Basically, Twitter is a microblogging platform. This is what Twitter looks like when you log in. Twitter works based on one-way connections. So whereas some social networking sites rely on reciprocal connections where both users agree to the relationship, Twitter is based on one-way connections where users can follow your tweets and you can follow other users' tweets as well. Additionally, if you choose to have your tweets public, then anybody can view them regardless of whether they have a Twitter account or not. And of course, Twitter restricts tweets to 140 characters, so you have to be very concise. So Twitter also facilitates communication by allowing users to reply to tweets, or you can mention a specific user by tagging them with the @sign. Like most social media, Twitter is a very flexible platform. It has its own application programming interface, so companies and organizations can create their own apps to extend the use of Twitter. And this really results in a variety of ways that Twitter can be employed. But I'm going to look at some basic best practices in education. Two of the fundamental principles of integrating Twitter in an educational context are, one, bridging the gap between the classroom and everything outside of the classroom, and two, reducing some of the social barriers that exist within the classroom. Okay, number one, encourage students to ask questions about the course material, and relevant topics. So this first best practice draws on those two principles in order to increase engagement. It's also nice because multiple students might have the same question, so if you answer a question on Twitter, it's likely that other students will see the response and prevent them from asking you the same question. Also, once the answer is up on Twitter, students can go back and review the answer for their own reference at any time. 2, share and encourage students to share relevant materials. This is basically an exercise to promote community and also to capitalize on the knowledge base of all the individuals in the class. So the value of Twitter basically relies on who you're connected to, how frequently you participate, and how conscientious you are about contributing value to the community. So you want to encourage and you want to post things as frequently as you can in order to stimulate conversation and reflection. Like some of the other best practices, it also gives the sense that the class never ends, that it's a constant process that's going on and a constant outlet for students to tap into. It also allows for the instructor to create a sense of social presence for the students, so the students have an understanding of what the instructor values, what he or she is interested in, and just sort of personifies the instructor to help students latch on to that instructor and feel more motivated to involve themselves in the course. 3, ask students to use Twitter as a logbook and/or forum for discussing class assignments. This is particularly useful because when students begin to share their reflections on their work, it might divulge some anxieties or discomforts in the process. Students can gain comfort in the mutual experience that they have with their peers, or they can even offer each other suggestions or support. At the same time, instructors can monitor progress and detect any issues early on by allowing students to use Twitter in this way. 4, continue class discussions and/or initiate discussion of assigned reading using appropriate hashtags. This goes back to those two principles of bridging the gap between class and everything else, and also reducing social barriers. The key idea here is the use of hashtags. Hashtags can be used on Twitter to aggregate all the tweets on a particular topic. So this is just a good way to organize content and make it easily accessible for students. And hashtags can be used in many of the best practices. 5. Communicate and encourage students to communicate with experts and scholars in relevant fields. So this serves to expand the student's personal learning network and pull on a variety of different voices that exist on Twitter. Twitter is really nice because it has a wealth of knowledge of individuals who post and share their work. So it's important to encourage students to use Twitter to tap into that network. So beyond those basic best practices, I'm going to offer some bonus material. 1. Live tweet, or back channel as the technical term is, events and or class sessions with relevant hashtag. So live tweeting events can be very helpful in increasing student engagement, and I've found when I live tweet events that it actually helps me pay attention more. And it also allows students to create their own conversations in real time to create those relationships and the sense of community that's so important in the class. Again, using hashtags to aggregate information just makes it easy to organize and access later on. This is just a fun example of live tweeting. Recently, a hospital live tweeted an open heart surgery procedure. So they tweeted the procedure step by step and allowed users to ask questions which they responded to in real time. 2. Poll the class. You can create a poll or a survey online pretty easily, and it's just a good way to get a sense of how the class is feeling on a particular topic, or settle a debate, whatever it may be. It's just a sort of fun exercise that you can use Twitter with. Here's an example of what a Twitter poll might look like. I use TweetPoll to create this poll, and that allows you to do polls for up to 400 votes for free, and then it's paid. But it's pretty easy. 3. Exercises in rhetoric. So the concise and sort of personal nature of Twitter lends itself very well to exercises in rhetoric. It challenges students to think about and communicate academic concepts in a different context. So these are some examples of ways that you can use Twitter as exercises in rhetoric. Number 1, you can ask students to summarize a class session on Twitter. Because of the 140 character limits, you'll find that students will be challenged to really pick out the key points of a class session. 2, you can ask students to create a dialogue or narrative from the point of view of historical or public figures, particularly centered around a key issue addressed in class. This is again just a way for students to take the academic concepts and transport them into a new context. So this is a little glib, but as an example, we have somebody who is posing as Richard Nixon on Twitter and says, "Messed up Paula Deen's recipe again, I am not a cook." Another example, someone has been live tweeting World War II, so that's another take on it following a historical event. 4, create a Twitter list of experts or scholars or notable professionals in relevant fields. Twitter has the function that allows you to aggregate users in particular categories that you specify. So for example, I have a list of Philadelphian users, or I have a list of librarian users, and it basically just allows you to view the tweets coming from a certain group of individuals that you've specified. 5, use Hootsuite or a similar platform to schedule tweets. So Hootsuite is a social media dashboard that is just another way to access your account and to use Twitter. And one of its features is to schedule tweets. So this is kind of nice because you can use it to schedule tweets at the beginning of the term before things sort of get crazy. So for example, you can schedule tweets about reminders of assignment deadlines. And that is basically it for Twitter.